Okay, so you've probably already read the title of this book and you're a little bit skeptical about the video. I mean, having more in church is a good thing, right? More guests, more salvations, more ministry, more baptisms, and more impact. Well, sure, but having more of these good things also creates the need for having more of other things, like more staff, more services, more space, and more money. And those things are not as easy to come by, especially in these economic times. Well, the book The More with Less Church gets real about the issues that churches face with buildings, finances, staffing, and ministries, and they give you some awesome ideas on how your church can start doing less and end up having more resources and impact. So we're going to walk you through 10 ways in this 2-part video series on how you can do less and get more in your churches. So be sure that you don't miss either of these videos. Okay, so the first thing we'll cover is how you can go about accomplishing more ministry by actually doing less. One of the most common things we hear from churches is that they never have enough people to fill open positions. But maybe the problem isn't that there are not enough people, but instead you just have too many slots. You see, in church we're really good at starting programs, but we're horrible at ending them. So naturally, we just keep adding and adding programs until we realize that we're using up a ton of time, energy, and resources for a program that's run by people who aren't really passionate about it anyways. If we're going to keep adding programs, then we need to sit down and decide what ministries need to get pruned, so that we can provide more energy to other ministries that are more fruitful. Alright, next, your church needs to learn how to make more disciples by teaching less. In our churches, we spend a ton of time teaching people, but head knowledge alone doesn't lead to life transformation. Did you know that the average Christian is educated 3 years beyond their level of obedience? Jesus said in Luke 6:40 that when a student is fully trained, they will be like their teacher. What it doesn't say is that they will know everything that their teacher knows. In order for Jesus' disciples to be like him, they needed to be with him. In the same way, we need to stop focusing all of our efforts on teaching and focus more on creating relationships that are open and lead to life transformation. Alright, so the next thing that your church needs to start doing is to learn how to multiply leadership without recruiting ready-made leaders to come to your church. Oftentimes, churches are just content waiting around to recruit that one awesome leader to come to their church to fill a ministry position, because honestly, it's not a super lengthy process. But what they miss is that there are already awesome leaders waiting to be grown in your church. If a church only focuses on recruiting ready-made leaders, then there's always going to be a leadership drought. As a pastor, your job is to equip people to do ministry, not just keep finding new hires. But what happens if there isn't anyone in your church who's comfortable enough to step up and be a leader? Well, the best way to develop somebody as a leader is to encourage them to be a part of a ministry team, where they can see how things are run and how decisions are made. As their experience increases, so will their confidence level as a leader in that area of ministry. But make sure that you don't leave them high and dry. Equip them by providing all the necessary resources, otherwise they're just going to end up frustrated, discouraged, and leave the team. Okay, so this next way to do more by doing less is gonna seem a little bit crazy, but stay with me. If you want to improve the health of your church, then you need to welcome conflict. I know, it's crazy, right? But think about it. What relationship is healthy if it never has to endure conflict? Conflict, once it's resolved, always leads to a more intimate relationship. But without it, the relationship is just surface level. If your church is doing all it can to shy away from conflict, then you're actually hurting your church. Healthy churches know how to disagree without being disagreeable. If you're always trying to stay away from conflict, then the creative people and the visionaries won't be allowed to introduce new ideas because it's going to make waves. And as a result, they're going to leave your church and go somewhere else where they can use their talents. Okay, but what if you as the pastor are fine with changing some stuff up, but your congregation would tar and feather you the moment you change something? Well, first, you can't let this stop you. Culture is continuously changing, and although our message doesn't change, the way we go about it must change, or we're just not going to reach the next generation. If you're going to be a church that's effective for more than one generation, then you must embrace the cultural changes that make you uncomfortable. Second, if your church is unwilling to change, then they need a heart change before anything else changes. You've got to make it clear to them that there's a gap between where the church is now and where God wants them to be. The clearer this message is, the more that they'll not be able to be content with where they are. Alright, the last thing that we're going to look at in this video is how you can make big changes by taking baby steps. Businesses that don't make changes die, and so do churches. And to be clear, we're not talking about adding a water fountain or painting a wall a new color. You should never be wondering if you need to make changes. You should be always looking to implement more effective ways of doing ministry. But before you go crazy with making big changes, you first must change your church's values. Otherwise, you're just going to jack stuff up. But if your church sees the value in doing things a different way, then they're going to be willing to endure the uncomfortableness. Thank you so much for continuing to check out our videos. We really feel blessed to be able to help pastors like you learn faster, apply more, and lead better. If you like this video, make sure that you stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to give you 5 more ways to do more with less staff, buildings, and finances. Also, be sure to check out our awesome workshop material to help you apply these principles to your church this week.